episode 2. In this episode, we're going to do something slightly different, and we're going to look at a debriefing tool that some psychologists have developed to help NHS workers on the front line debrief from stressful situations and develop some psychological resilience. Now, in response to the COVID-19 crisis, a group of psychologists at the University of Liverpool, Professor Lawrence Allison, Emily Allison, Martin Ferguson, myself and many others, tried to develop some support for frontline workers, and one of those tools is the Ground T.R.U.T.H debriefing tool. Now, what we're going to do in this video is we're going to give you a story, the case of Luke. Now, Luke's voice has been covered up to preserve his anonymity, but he very kindly shared with us a situation that he faced while responding to COVID-19. We're going to give you that story and then show you how he can go through the Ground T.R.U.T.H debriefing tool in order to help unpack the situation, why it was challenging, and also self-reflect to make sure that his health and resilience are okay. And if you want any of the links to the tool, the resources, the training guidance, all in the links below. So please use this video to help you learn about the tool, learn how to use the tool, and if you need to, then maybe you can take it into your workplace to help debrief some of the situations you may be facing.
So my name's Luke. I've been in intensive care for a number of years. Had a very difficult decision today. I was managing 2 beds at the same time. One bed was an elderly gentleman coming to the end of his life, and he was being seen via iPad by his daughter, who was able to be with him. She was very keen to have me there also, to be the hand that would hold his hand as she said goodbye. But I had to also make the decision as to whether I was going to do that or see the other gentleman in the next bed, who was a younger fella who had no one with him. So the decision was whether to see it to her that I was unable to be with her because I had to see this other gentleman and be with him, or whether to stay with her and be the hand that held his hand as she said goodbye.
So the very first thing that we're going to do, and those of you who've done the electronic tool will be familiar with this, is I'm going to give you all a QR code to scan on your phones or iPad, and then I'm going to ask you to fill in what you have found the most difficult or the most challenging, either in the last week or since we've done the last review. Okay, so if everybody could scan your code now. Okay, thanks so much everybody for taking the time to do that. I know, Luke, you'd mentioned that the situation that you were going to bring is one we're actually going to discuss as a group. So would you mind just saying for the rest of the group what you put down under the talk questions?
In terms of what I wrote down, I wrote end of life care for 2 competing beds. One with iPad relative and one with no one, and I ticked under question 2.2 managing emotional distress and issues with patients' loved ones.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, now what I'm going to ask you to do, Luke, if that's okay, since that's the situation we're going to discuss and work through as a group, could you just describe that situation to us in more detail? You know, in like 2 or 3 sentences, what specifically do you think made this quite difficult to deal with?
Sure. So this is a couple of days ago now. I had an elderly gentleman in one bed being seen by his daughter. When I say seen, as you know, that was via iPad because of infection control. And another bed that I was dealing with a guy who's, I think, 51, who had no one present with him, both end-of-life care, both on ventilators, and difficult decision was in relation to who I would stay with, because, as you know, the volume is a key issue here. The young lady wanted me to spend some time with her father and be the hand that held her father's hand as she said goodbye, rather than just being there with an iPad. But at the same time, I had the other younger gentleman there with no one. And so my decision ultimately was to stay with the younger gentleman.
Okay, so that's quite a difficult challenge. And you're saying that in that situation, because you had 2 patients who were both at end of life, and the dilemma was to either stay with the man who had his daughter saying goodbye to him on the iPad to hold his hand, which is what she wanted you to do, or to go with the younger gentleman who had no one present, and that what you decided to do was to go with the younger gentleman because he had no one there with him, rather than to let him die alone. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. He was a guy that had lost his brother and his father and his mother. He's quite a kind of socially isolated guy anyway, and so had no one there. The difficulty, I guess, was that with her, that is the younger lady, she did want me to be there, but she was incredibly understanding, actually, and when I explained to her that the other younger guy didn't have anyone, she was seemed to be very accepting and compassionate in relation to that. I did consider, and maybe I should have drawn upon some younger members of staff to assist, but I chose not to make that decision. Probably with the benefit of hindsight, I'd maybe do it differently next time.
Okay, that was my next question, actually. And obviously, you know, as you say, in the moment, you've got to act and deal with what's there in front of you. But if you were in that situation again, is there anything that you would change or that you would do differently?
I think I would have come to the conclusion a lot quicker had I focused on what I know to be true, certainly in terms of my values and to some extent in relation to all palliative care, that you don't have someone die alone. So, you know, this debate in my mind around whose bed I was going to attend maybe became a little bit protracted. And the key issue I should have focused on really was dealing with her in a wee bit more of a complete way, instead of very rapidly making that decision. And secondly, maybe that issue that I mentioned around having a younger member of staff that I felt I didn't want to put in that position, but I should have maybe been a bit more respectful of the fact that a lot of these young people that we're taking on now, albeit they may not have had the experience, but they're pretty smart cookies and certainly probably could have dealt with it, and then we would not have had that issue of personnel worries, when actually that was not really, should not really have been an issue in my mind.
Okay, thanks very much, Luke, for describing that to us. It's obviously quite a difficult, challenging situation to be in. And you've been very, you know, open and honest and you know, searching, thinking about, are there other ways that we could improve responding to that sort of situation. So what I'm going to do is actually ask the rest of the group to take a few minutes now to discuss these kinds of issues around end-of-life care, around availability of staff, around, communication with family members remotely, all those kinds of things that your dilemma brought up, and just share your own experiences of that and whether there are any possible strategies, suggestions, solutions that you think we could feed back on this issue. And if what we end up with is just wanting to describe how difficult that is and how everyone is feeling about having to face those kind of situations, then that's okay as well. We can feed that back as well. So if you could all discuss that now in your pairs or trios, and then we'll take a bit of feedback after that. Thanks. Okay, thanks everybody. That's been quite an interesting, really thought-provoking discussion. And what I've got down in terms of feedback or lessons learned that you want to communicate back, part of the issue was not knowing how much preparation junior staff who are maybe new on the wards or new to teams have had for handling those kinds of circumstances. So that's leading to senior staff maybe, as Luke described, feeling a bit reluctant to draw on them. So one of the points that was made by Julie was why don't we just make sure that senior staff have junior staff been prepared for those kinds of situations? What training, what preparation have they had, so that they can be reassured about that? Another interesting point that was raised to feedback was just about the actual number of personnel and the ability to have these conversations, these incredibly difficult conversations at end of life, where you've got a family member who can't be in the room and is remotely trying to say goodbye. That is a situation that is new really for most, if not all of us. So one of the suggestions was, could we not have either some support from staff who are more skilled in end-of-life care or very familiar with it and experienced with it? So that's something that we can put forward if that gets a pushback and the answer is no, there simply isn't a way to do that. Then people have said, well, could we have some training or support or even just, top guidance tips about how to handle those conversations and support people in that incredibly difficult circumstance. So that, again, was really useful suggestion. Okay, Luke, thank you so much again for sharing this with the group and being so honest and direct about it. Is there anything that you'd want to add to that? So in other words, is there some learning or advice that you would give to someone if they found themselves in that situation that you found yourself in?
No, I think it's a fair summary. As I say, the weird thing is talking it through now, I felt very, much more emotional at the time in relation to the end of care element of it, but now that I've talked it through in a weird kind of way, I feel a wee bit flat about that and more, concerned / emotional about the way that I dealt with the lady that was saying goodbye to her father. So maybe another issue is in relation to thinking that through. It's very weird having a conversation over an iPad, and maybe I feel more bad about the fact that because she was so reasonable with me, did she regret that? That's kind of hanging around my head a wee bit.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. And I think that's understandable and an important point to raise, and a lot of people have said it, those, other people who've had those conversations with family members who are remotely having to say goodbye have said it's so difficult to emotionally draining and challenging to manage those conversations. So there's a few points there around preparing people for that, supporting people to be able to do that, and then also I think, and rightly so, you're pointing out, Luke, after you've had to do that, being able to offload that and say how that's made you feel. So I really appreciate your openness and honesty about that during this session. Okay, we're going to move on then to the final segment of the After Action Review, everybody. Okay, thanks everybody for filling that in. Can we just go round now and I'm going to ask you which H you chose that you want to work on and what it is you're going to do to try and boost that H for everybody. So Luke, since we focus on you today, can you start us off with what H you chose and what you're going to do?
Well, I'm not so sure about healthy diet. I've just got a bread maker, and I'm going to make some bread. And then the other ridiculous thing I'm going to do is I've got a couple of mates online tonight, and we're going to be doing like a karaoke thing where, for whatever reason, I always get picked to play the female in the duet. So I'll be doing that tonight.
Okay, excellent. I think you wouldn't video that for us, would you?
You do.
Okay. Thanks very much.
We hope that you enjoyed that video. And just a reminder, all of the information that you may need are in the links below. So if you want to see the tool or look at the instructor's handbook or see any of the other information that's come out as part of Project Iris, check out those links down below. Thank you for watching this video. We really hope you learn about the work that's going on, part of the Ground Truth project, and maybe it can be useful in your role. Thank you very much.